If you're a bit tired of the old sword and sorcery and want something more realistic and brutal, then this might be for you. Hey people, voice talking to you, and this is Lost in the Open. In this low fantasy turn-based strategy roguelike, we take on the role of a wounded king fleeing the wilderness of a foreign land. If you'd like to check this game out for yourself, I'll have a link for you down in the description, and right next to that is a link to my full playthrough stream if you'd like to see some more gameplay and my first impressions. Also, you're gonna have to forgive me, my voice is a little gravelly because I'm still sick. The game begins after we, the king of the fictional kingdom of Rudome, are lured to the castle of the rival nation of Stratha. During a strategic meeting, we are nearly done in by an assassin's blade, but miraculously manage to escape with a couple of our most loyal guards. Wounded, displaced, and on the run from the Strathian Royal Guard, we must survive a perilous journey through no man's land if we have any hope of returning home alive. That is pretty much all the game tells us. But I did read the Steam page, so I know that we were a pretty ruthless and unjust ruler as well. In certain styles of looping roguelikes, devs can usually get away with minimal effort put towards the story, but here I don't really think that's the case. It's completely possible the devs are already planning to include a more complete story, but I'm gonna say it anyways. The concept here is an interesting one, and I'm curious about the story between the kingdoms of Rudome and Stratha. I mean, we don't need an extensive history lesson or anything, but why do they want us dead? If it was our own subjects we were cruel to, then why is a foreign kingdom sending assassins? Having some context as to why we're on the run and what we're trying to return to would add a lot more depth to this mix. Is our kingdom going to be an anarchy when we return? Was there a conspiracy between our advisors and Stratha? Do we have some personal feud with the ruler of Stratha? And is there any hope for redemption for our fallen king? Putting aside what's missing, let's talk about what the demo did show us. The first thing that caught my eye about this game was the stellar art style. It's a gorgeous mix of hand-drawn maps and paper backgrounds that make encounters feel like a pop-up storybook. As for the gameplay, it's a mix of a transient roguelike setup and a bit of a trimmed-down tactical RPG. We take turns on the overland map by choosing the next node to travel to as we make our way towards the edge of the map to the north, where we will hopefully be returning to our kingdom. We can tell ahead of time the general type of encounter each node will offer and see which nodes it'll connect to. That said, not every recruitment node will simply add a new member to your ranks. One may be an encounter with wandering mercenaries that can be hired with gold, while another presents a challenge from a pair of hunters who will only join you if you slay an alpha wolf nearby. These quests don't span between nodes yet, but there is a locked quest log in the UI, so I'm expecting that longer and more involved quests are in the works, which checks a box in my book. Some of these encounters will require special items or offer choices to the player as to how they want to handle them. Aside from the welfare of our party, gold and food are two resources we will need to keep a close eye on. If we run out of food, travel will start to deal damage to our soldiers, whereas gold can be spent at traders or used to solve certain encounters. Traders will sell items that can be equipped to characters to drastically boost their abilities and can also upgrade that character's base equipment. Each character has a starting set of armor and a weapon. These can't be swapped out, but spending gold to improve them will boost that character's base stats. Traveling between nodes takes time and food, but it'll slowly restore health to your party. Bouncing back and forth between two empty nodes might seem like an easy way to heal, but remember that enemy forces are hunting you, and they will slowly claim territory in an ever-expanding wave. Different map tiles will have different effects on both our movement and that of the Strathian Royal Guard. Dense forests will slow us down, but our pursuers won't find it easy to search them either. Bandits might make travel dangerous for us, but their presence will slow enemy expansion as well, so plan your route carefully. While avoiding battle is the ideal, eventually combat will become a necessity. Combat takes place in a turn-based hex grid with different obstacles and terrain types. Muddy ground will slow units down, while traps hinder and harm those that enter their space. Each unit has their own initiative score and will be placed on the timeline accordingly. On a turn, a unit can spend stamina to move or use abilities. Every unit will have a basic attack and typically 1 to 2 starting skills. Each skill will have a different cooldown and stamina cost as well. Some skills will apply debuffs or boosts, some will move enemies or allies, and others boast AoE effects. Pretty standard tactical RPG stuff. But the most interesting and most important aspect of combat is positioning. And that's not just where a unit is standing, but also what direction they're facing. Attacking a unit from the side will increase attack accuracy and damage by 50%, while striking from the rear will double those stats. Players can rotate their units at the end of each move action or at any time on their turn. Formation and facing are vital in this game, and exposing enemy weak points while protecting your own vulnerabilities is the key to victory. Defeating enemies will earn experience points for your units, but only those that participate. The more damage they deal, the more they earn. Leveling up will give that character 1 skill point and the choice between one of several randomized abilities, or 3 additional skill points. Skill points can be spent to improve the effectiveness of that character's abilities, following one of 2 available skill chains with differing bonuses. Between skills, equipment, items, and the randomized traits each unit starts with, there's a fair bit to manage for each character. As I mentioned though, this game is a roguelike. When a unit dies, they're gone for good. Sacrifices will have to be made for the good of the group, but if your king dies, it's game over. The king is both your strongest unit and your greatest vulnerability. There are no redos, so a faulty move could prove fatal to your run. The overall makeup of both the map mechanics and the combat are pretty solid. That said, there is, of course, a pretty noticeable lack of variety in traits, unit types, and encounters. This is a demo, so that's to be expected, but there are also no animations and minimal sound effects for combat actions. The sprite style and the rotation mechanics could make full animations pretty time consuming, so I'd recommend simply creating one additional sprite of each character with their weapon raised that swaps in briefly when that unit attacks. Simple details like that can add a lot more life to a rather dull battlefield. The tutorials also went in kind of an odd direction. They mostly explained nothing until I performed the action associated with that tutorial. So flanking, for example, wasn't explained to me until I tried to flank. That means if a player doesn't figure something out on their own or stumble into it, certain aspects of the game likely won't be outlined for them at all. This is a brutally difficult game too, with a drastic increase in the lethality of enemies between difficulty settings, so players are probably going to be restarting a lot. If you aren't into true roguelikes, this might not be for you. The devs may also want to change up the difficulty settings so that increasing it does more than just buff enemies and debuff allies. In all, I'd say this is a great start to what could turn into a super stylish and surprisingly unique low fantasy tactical RPG. I don't think I would buy this game in its current state, but fans of hardcore roguelikes or realistic medieval tactics will definitely want to keep an eye on this one. But anyway, I'm just the voice in your head. So what do you think about this game? Do you like the concept of the positioning mechanics, or do you wish things were a bit simpler? Is the roguelike loop enough to keep you interested, or do you want more of a story? Does the art style of this game remind you of any other titles? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like helps get the channel through the algorithm and keeps the assassins at bay. If you want to see more, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep new content coming your way, because I put out new stuff every week. Thanks so much for listening to me today, and you'll be hearing from me again real soon.